used to do that.
Something to eat before
I was going to eat before. Okay.
before it gets
Eat in the car.
light, huh?
Eat in the car. You have a whole time in the car to
Yeah.
eat. All right.
All right.
Sorry, we started. We're on.
Mishna will do the best we can. That's
Okay.
all I can tell you.
Very good. All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Didn't realize that we went on yet, but we're on. Okay. We're learning Mishnah Yishkalim, Perek Dalet, Chapter 4, Mishnah Tes, Mishnah 9. Okay. First, an introduction. The Beis HaMikdash would buy wine, oil, and fine flour that was produced and maintained at the high standards of purity required for offerings. All right. So you needed all these ingredients. You needed all these foods, wine, oil, fine flour. They didn't produce it at the Beis HaMikdash, that they get it from suppliers. But of course, those suppliers had to make sure that they were maintained and produced in a level of purity that would therefore allow them to be used on the Mizbeach, on the altar. Now, when these supplies were bought for communal offerings, they were paid for from the treasury chamber funds. As we learned previously, any communal offerings comes from the shkalim, come from the coins that were collected for the communal sacrifices and put in a special chamber in the Beis HaMikdash. Sometimes the Beis HaMikdash administrators entered into short-term agreements with suppliers and set prices for those supplies. Other times they would make long-term agreements with suppliers who committed to supplying the Beis HaMikdash throughout the year. The Mishnah discusses the terms of these arrangements. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. There were sometimes short-term arrangements with suppliers. There were sometimes long-term or a whole year's arrangement. Basically, the Beis HaMikdash, the administrators of the Beis HaMikdash were going to set prices. They're going to set a price at the beginning of their agreement. So the first discussion of the Mishnah is going to be for when they did a short-term agreement. Every 30 days, they would set the prices for the fine they would set the prices for the wine, the oil, and the fine flour that was bought with the treasury funds every 30 days. Meaning, there's a lot of words in here. Misharin as halishka means they would evaluate the chamber, but it means that they would set the prices for the ingredients, the wine, the oil, the flour that was bought from the shkalim that were in the lishka, in the chamber. Mm-hmm. Okay, so every 30 days, that means on a short-term agreement, they will make an agreement that for the next 30 days, the price is going to be so-and-so. That's what they're going to do. Now, once this price was agreed upon, the Beis HaMikdash would buy the supplies they needed each day at the agreed upon price, even if the market price of the supplies went up. They made an agreement for 30 days. This is what we're paying. And every day they would go and they would buy the supplies they needed, but always at the price that was made up for the next 30 days. If, let's say, the market price went up, then who gained out of the deal? The Beis HaMikdash, because they were set at the price that they set at the beginning of the 30 days. If, however, the market price of the supplies went down, the Beis HaMikdash would pay only the new lower price. Yeah. Beis HaMikdash always gets the upper hand. If the price goes up, then they stick with the price that they made up. If the price goes down, then they pay the lower price. But this is a short-term agreement. And it seems a short-term agreement, they made a deal, and every day they went and they bought their supplies and they paid for it. And depending on the price of that day, that's how much they paid. Now the Mishnah goes into the long-term agreement. Now, this long-term agreement would be set up at the time of the harvest, because at the time of the harvest, there's plenty of stuff to go around, and the price is going to be the best price. It's going to be the least expensive price because there's plenty of it around, and they would basically lock into that price for the year. Now, so we say like this: somebody who accepts to supply the Beis HaMikdash for the coming year. For, let's say, the example used in the Mishnah are l'sapek slasses, to supply the flour, and it could have been the oil, it could have been the wine. They accepted to supply the flour may arba from 4. From 4 means that the rate at that time was 4 sa'ah of flour for 1 selah. Okay, a sa'ah is a volume, is a dry measure. And when they made up at the beginning, when they made up at the harvest time for the year, that the price was going to be, because that was the market value right now, for 4 sa'ah for 1 selah. Okay, that was the deal that was made. Amadu mishalish. And then what happens? At some point of time, the price of flour goes up and now stands at 3 sa'ah for a selah. What happens then? Yisapik me'arba. When he supplies, he still has to supply for the price when it was 4 sa'ah per selah. But even though the market value went up, at the end of the day, the Beis HaMikdash locked into the price, and therefore that's how it's going to stand, even though the market value went up, and really now he should be right. It went up and it now stands 3 sa'ah for a selah. He still has to supply the Beis HaMikdash with 4 sa'ah per selah according to the original agreement. Now, I'm going to read here from the notes. Important thing to know. When entering into a long-term agreement, the Beis HaMikdash would pay the supplier upfront at harvest time for the year's supplies. Okay, in this case, they paid upfront. Since the Beis HaMikdash has already paid for the year's wheat, the supplier is bound to deliver the flour to the Beis HaMikdash at the low price agreed upon at harvest time when he received the money. Okay, that's a special law that they say is derived from a verse in the Torah, that the Beis HaMikdash can already acquire things by just giving the money. If you want to acquire something, like when you want to acquire grain and you pay money, the money that you pay doesn't acquire it for you. You got to take it. You got to take it into your possession. You have to make an actual kinyan, an act of acquisition on the object itself. For the Beis HaMikdash, they don't have to do that. If they pay up front, they've already acquired it. They acquired it, and the price goes up. Not my problem. I already bought it. And therefore, it comes out, if it goes up in price, that the Beis HaMikdash still pays the lower price. Now, what happens? Mishna continues. Let's say the original agreement was when the market value was 3 sa'ah per selah. Selah is a coin. And now it went down to 4. The market value went down, and now for a sa'ah, you get 4 selah. Okay? So how much now does the supplier have to give to the Beis HaMikdash? According to the original agreement of 3, or now according to the new value of 4? Nu, what do you say? What do you think?
3, of course.
No. The answer is Isapik Me'arba. The supplier has to now give 4. He has to give it according to the new low market value. Sheyad hektish alal yaina, the hand of hektish, meaning the Beis HaMikdash, the power of the Beis HaMikdash, always has the upper hand. Now the point is like this: in a situation where, let's say, you have nothing with the Beis HaMikdash, we make up a deal. You know, it's the going price at the time that we made up a deal was 3 sa'ah per selah, right? And then before you wanted to acquire it, before you actually took possession of the grain, until you actually acquired the grain, what happened? The price dropped. It went for 4 for selah. So now, since you didn't take possession of the grain yet, you haven't acquired the grain, you go back to the guy and you say, you know what, I have a right to back out on this deal. Just because we made up 3 sa'ah for seller originally, because that was the market value, now that the market value changed, I can back out. So, you know, at the end of the day, would you like to make a deal or not? And that's how you get it down to the market value of 4 for seller. In the case of the Beis HaMikdash, although we just said that the Beis HaMikdash acquires things when it pays, but we're not going to make the Beis HaMikdash be worse than a regular person. And therefore, the same way a regular person can basically knock it down, the Beis HaMikdash also can knock it down. And that's what it means. The Beis HaMikdash always has the upper hand. It's really for the administrators of the Beis HaMikdash always have the upper hand. Whichever is best for whichever is the best price they can take for the supplies for the Beis HaMikdash. If it makes more sense to follow the fact that when they paid for it, they acquired it, and then you lock into that price. So now you stay with that price. You know the better price, you go that way. If it comes out that not following that, but rather not being any different than a regular person who doesn't acquire before he takes possession, if that works out better for the price, meaning when the market value goes down, then they work with that. And this was a special decree that was made for, did they say this here? Basically, this was a special decree that was made for the benefit of the Beis HaMikdash. Now, Mishna continues. The im Hesliya Soilas. Now, let's say again, the Beis HaMikdash went ahead. They made up a year. They made up that they're buying there, and they gave money for flour. Right, that's one of the things that they need. And the commentaries say that we're about to say means, and even if let's say they took possession of the flour, they took it. Not only they pay for it, they took it. The Misliya Soilas, the flour went wormy. There's worms in the flour. Okay, can you use that flour now for the base for an offering? No, you can't. It went bad. Okay, who takes the loss? Hisli aloi. The spoiling of the flour goes onto the supplier. He's got to resupply new flour, even though they paid and they even took it. At the end of the day, we say at the end of the day, as we're going to the Mishna will explain, the deal is not done, and therefore it's not completely done, and therefore he's got to make sure to supply good stuff. And even if he supplied the good stuff, still, v'mhechmitz yayin. Let's say the wine that they supplied went sour. Hechmitz loy. That souring goes to him, goes to the supplier. The supplier has to take that loss, and he's got to give them good wine. And the Mishnah explains why is this. The Eina Mekabelas Ma'asav. He does not receive his money, meaning even though the Beis HaMikdash gave this person money, still, he doesn't receive the money. He doesn't take full possession of the money until the Mizbeach actually accepts the offering. Meaning only once the supplies are actually used, that's when the deal is completely done. So even though the Beis HaMikdash went ahead and they gave money and they took the supplies, and you know what? And that money that they gave you, you, Mr. Supplier, you went and you spent it, and you're allowed to spend it. I don't say you can't spend it, you're allowed to spend it. Okay? Nonetheless, this is not considered a done deal, a completed deal, until those ingredients are actually offered on the Mizbeach, offered as a sacrifice. Then it's all done. But until then, it's not considered completely done. And therefore, if the stuff goes bad, the supplier has to give him good stuff because it's not considered yet that the Beis HaMikdash acquired it fully to say that, okay, it's done. It's already done. It's the Beis HaMikdash's property. It's its loss. No, we don't say that. We say, and this is a special takana, a law that the sages instituted to protect the Beis HaMikdash, that basically, even though everything was done, if anything goes bad, it's the responsibility of the supplier to make up for it. So basically, as our Mishna is saying here, the Beis HaMikdash always has the upper hand. When it works to say that because they gave the money, they acquired it, then we say they acquired it. If it doesn't work that way, if it works for them the other way, that we should say they didn't acquire it yet, they're not going to acquire it yet. Okay. Have a wonderful day, wonderful Shabbos.
Good guarantee.
And so before Rosh Hashanah, we're not having a class. We're not having a Mishnah class on Sunday. So wishing you all here and anybody who's watching this or will watch this, Kasiva Chesima Tova, a very good gebench year.
Come on, Tim.
Thank you.